Hi and welcome to this video on getting set up for JavaScript development with the 0bs network. Before we get started, make sure that you've installed Node.js. I've got version 10.16.0 here, and that will automatically install NPM too. I've got version 6.9.0. I'm using Visual Studio Code here and sync settings. I'll link to the GitHub ID for the settings sync so you can get your ID set up the same. Okay, I'm currently using Windows as well to cater for the majority, but the commands should be exactly the same in Linux or Mac. So the first thing we need to do is create a wallet on the 0bs network testnet. So we'll make a note of this address. And then give the account a name. And get started. So the first thing we need to do is get some coins. So we'll go to the faucet, which is on the Explorer, pop the address in here, select all the images with cars, one there, and request our ZBS. Now after a couple of seconds that should show up on our balance here. Okay, there we go, 250 ZBS. We're also going to need our seed, so I'll take a note of that now. And now we're all set up to start building our JavaScript demonstration. Okay, so let's set up a package. We'll just call it JS setup, for example. And the first thing we need to do is install our 0bs network transactions library. It's called zbs-transactions, and this allows you to create all the different transaction types and broadcast them to a node. Okay, so that's done. So now we can create our index.js and let's create a transfer transaction. So we're going to need to import the transfer class and broadcast. The transfer is the transaction type that we're going to do, and the broadcast class allows us to send that to a node. So we're going to need our seed, and that's the part that we saved before. In a production application, you'd want to store this encrypted with something like the user's password, but for now we're just going to pop this in here, and we need to create a transaction. It'll be a signed transaction. So there's a couple of pieces of information we need to put in here. The first one is the amount, let's say 1 ZBS coin, and the recipient. For the recipient, let's use ourselves. It should still show it in our wallet. So we'll just capture our address here. Okay, and one more piece of information we need to put in there, and that's the seed. So this will create as a signed transaction, and the other thing that we need to do with this is broadcast that to a node. Now the library is set up for MainNet, so we need to define the URL that we're going to broadcast that to. In this case, it's node 1 testnet 0bsnetwork.com, and then we just need to call broadcast. We'll pass in our signed transaction to that node URL. We want to take a look at that, so this returns a promise, so we can have a look at what comes back in our response and log that out, which, all being well, should be a signed transaction response. So now we're ready to test that. Okay, so you can see here we've got back some extra information, including the timestamp, the proof, which is the signature on the transaction that's been signed with our private key generated from our seed, and a few other pieces of information that are part of the transfer transaction. So if we take a look at our wallet, we can see that our balance is decremented. That's the fee. And we can see the transaction is there. So let's copy that transaction ID. And if we pop that into the Explorer, just to double check, we can see that our transaction's been successful. Now this was done as a Node.js example. In a real world scenario, the user would be executing transactions at the client side. So we can also use this JavaScript library to create a client-side application using Browserify. So let's install our Browserify package. And we need to create a new file that will be our browser file. Let's call it index.html. And in here, I'll just copy this in here. So we've linked to a script source called bundle, and we have a main div. So in our package, we need to add a step to build our JavaScript that we've created here into a browser compatible file. Okay, so we need a file called browser.js. This is going to be our browser version of the JavaScript we've just wrote. The reason that I've done that is that we want to output some of the response to the browser. So let's take our original JavaScript, we'll add it here, and instead of logging this out in the console, let's log it into the main div that we had before. We'll just do this using DOM. We've got that div called main before, and we'll just say it's inner HTML to the response that we've got back from there. Okay, so let's run that build. That should browserify this. We called it build, I think. So that's browserified the browser.js to bundle.js. Take a quick look at that. Okay, and let's now open that up in a browser and see what that looks like. Okay, so this is just running the browser, and once again we've received back our transaction ID, a new transaction, and we can see that's there in the browser and again in our wallet here. So there's an example of how to use exactly the same library for server-side and client-side code using JavaScript.